Hey fam, Shandon speaking.
Shh, Shandon.
Have you ever wanted your uni crush to finally notice you? Or maybe you fell for a player and want him to finally commit? Or you may wonder how to make the guys stop leaving you after sex. Love guru Matthew Hussey, whose sexual orientation we should probably question, knows the answers to all of those questions. Today, we will take a magnifying glass and, like Sherlock's, analyze his practical advice in detail and try to find out why Matthew Hussey will never help you attract Mr. Right. Let's dive into that.
Shh, Shandon.
I'm not gonna lie, I actually used to be one of his admirers, and I blindly followed his advice, the examples of which we will see now. In the end of the video, I will talk about my personal experience and why this type of advice didn't help me to find the right guy. But let's start by looking at what he actually recommends. Matthew Hussey, being a millionaire himself, as we figured out last time, likes to give some economic advice for dating.
Buy the popcorn.
I think we should just deal with the who should pay thing to begin with. The moment you say to a guy, you have to fucking pay for my time, you're saying this relationship isn't equal. This relationship isn't equal. My time is worth more than yours, so you should pay for it. Here's my view. If you go on a date with a guy and you don't offer to pay your share, you weren't taught right. If you go on a date and he doesn't pay, he wasn't taught right.
Okay, let's put a full stop in the money conversation once and for all. Who must pay on a date and who must not? If you want to pay, pay. If you don't want to pay, don't pay. The person who wants to pay the bill does that. If no one wants to pay, you're in trouble. But at least you know that you're not a match. And you need to pay for yourself and say goodbye forever to each other. Money is a huge part of a romantic relationship, and the sooner you find out the preferences of your love interest, the better. I personally like it when a guy pays the bill. Duh, who wouldn't? But I offer a guy to pay for myself on the first date. And if I see that he hesitates, or he says you can pay next time, or you can pay for drinks, I insist on paying, because I don't want to make him do something he doesn't want to, and because it's gonna be our last date. Not because I think bad of him, but because we have different mentalities. And my feelings just die the moment I pay for myself next to a guy. I swear I tried to change it. I was listening to Matthew Hussey's advice and I was buying popcorn, buying tickets, paying for myself at cafes, and I just realized that as soon as I started doing that, I had this resentment against these guys. And I could not view them more than a friend from that moment on. And I can't do anything about it. And then I met other guys who were telling me you will offend me if you pay. Or I had a friend who was very broke at the time. He literally had the money left to pay rent and for a package of dried peas that he would boil and eat for a couple of days. We went to McDonald's and obviously I paid for myself. When I'm friends with someone, I always pay for myself. But he was standing at the self-checkout next to me, and I pulled out my card and was literally running to his payment terminal, telling him let me pay, because I genuinely wanted to help, and I knew how hard his financial situation was. But he said no and hurried up to pay before I reached the terminal. And at that moment, I looked at him and thought to myself, wow, what a man. And this kick-started my crush on him. I thought even at such hard time, he stayed in charge of his own problems. He appeared so masculine to me at that moment and in power of this situation. And I like men in power. But I'm not trying to say that every man must pay for women and women must never pay for themselves. That is to say that I personally like guys who don't make me think who's going to pay for the bill when it arrives and make me afraid of the awkwardness of this moment every single time we go out. I personally like guys who enjoy paying for girls. Not the ones who do that but hate it, but who genuinely like that. And yes, they do exist. When I was listening to Matthew Hussey's advice, was I attracting guys? Yes. Did I feel happy and fulfilled in my life? No, because I was attracting the wrong type of guys. So to sum that up, no one owes anything to anyone, unless you're legally obliged. You have the right to want whatever the hell you want. Do the things that you want to do, don't do the things you don't want to do. And search for people who share your values. That is the right way to happiness. Mr. Hussey even gives you advice on what you need to compliment in a man.
The third way to compliment a guy that makes him fall for you, and I cannot overstate the importance of this, play to his masculinity. Show him how much of a man you really think he is. If a guy feels like a guy around you, he'll want to be around you more. You say to a man, I feel so safe whenever I'm around you.
Okay, here I don't see anything bad in complimenting a guy in any way. I just wanted to have a little discussion on the topic with you. Matthew Hussey recommends complimenting a guy's masculinity. I don't know, maybe I'm weird, but don't you think that being masculine these days does not necessarily imply having a masculine body, being fit and physically strong? I feel like we no longer live in a rural society where you have to fight with wild animals and other males in the tribe to feed your family and provide security for them. I feel like the tool of reaching an alpha status today is just money. Because if you have money, you have higher chances of feeding your family well, of providing better security, and of raising better, healthier offsprings. I don't know, but if you compare Elon Musk to any given bodybuilder, to me, Elon Musk is way more masculine. Because he can hire 10 other bodybuilders to protect him and his family, if he ever needs to. But that's my personal opinion. Please let me know yours. I would be really interested in hearing your take on masculinity. Guru Hussey gives you some precise instructions what to do the next morning after sex in order not to scare the poor guy away.
So, you had sex with him. So in this video, I'm going to talk you through 3 things that not only allow you to maintain your power, but actually make him want you more. Number 1,
Don't be weird. Many people, after waking up, having slept with someone, an intimate act, then all of a sudden start behaving really awkwardly, like the few hours of sleep in between drove this giant wedge between them.
I'm in no way an expert in sex, but I think if the morning after woohoo is awkward, that probably means that it was too early of a step in a relationship, don't you think? If you just went out on a couple of dates and you didn't really have a chance to get to know him or her well as a person and not as a sex object, the morning after sex will be awkward. Sexpert Hussey just assumes that you had sex on date number 3 and gives you very precise instructions on how you should act the next day in order not to scare the guy away.
So, in the morning, here's what you do. You give a little deadline. You say to him, I have to go soon. I have so much to do today. And then you give him a big cuddle. Because then when you're cuddling up to him, he's not thinking, is this person going to be here forever? Is this going to be awkward trying to figure out when I or she leaves? You've already put that marker in his mind.
So he just suggests that the minute you wake up, you should immediately announce that you will leave soon so that he doesn't worry too much whether you stay in his apartment for too long. Excuse me? If a guy wonders when will you finally leave his apartment after you just had sex, this guy clearly does not share a strong emotional bond with you. And yes, he can have thoughts like that. And yes, he may never call you again. I know that the guys with whom I was prepared to get intimate would never want me to leave their house as soon as possible the next day. It's the opposite. These guys would actually love me to stay and spend an entire day with me. Also, if you developed an emotional bond before sharing bed with someone, your interactions the next day after it happens cannot be awkward. I'm not saying that you should wait a year or 60 days before you have sex. No, that's totally up to you, your needs and wants. If you just really like sex, you have a high libido, your goal is to have sex, and you are fine with not seeing that guy ever again if he leaves, then in that case, just don't forget about contraception. If you're comfortable with one-night stands, that is your body, your life, and no one can tell you what you should or should not do. But I don't want you to have sex because you feel like it's time, or you feel pressured by him, or by some non-existent societal norms, or by movies that make sex appeal like it's something you do the first day you meet someone. Only do that if you yourself truly want it, and only when you feel comfortable, whether it is one day after or 1 year. And if you don't want to have sex with him, and he says that he can't wait any longer, tell him goodbye. Because having sex does not necessarily imply that he will stay with you after it happens. Believe me, there are so many other great guys who will respect your boundaries. And in case you want to have sex after knowing him for a week, who am I to stop you? If he doesn't text you back, you at least had a great night. Hopefully. Mr. Hussey can even make a player fall for you. Or at least that's what he promises. So the video called How to Get the Player Type to Commit to a Relationship is 9 minutes long. But let me just paraphrase one single statement that he makes there to save your time. So basically, you need to identify the boy's needs and meet all of them.
And the moment where a player decides he wants a relationship is not the moment where all his needs change. Sometimes his needs shift in terms of their priority level. In other words, maybe his need for variety goes down and his need for stability goes up. When he gets into a relationship, isn't it true that his need for variety can come back up over time? So it's not that the old needs leave him. It's that sometimes they have a reshuffle in importance. But as a woman, still, the biggest priority should be meeting all of his needs. Because that way, even if he had the player type in him, now that he's in a relationship, he's going to be excited about what that brings because it's still meeting every one of his needs.
Okay, let me go back to Mama Shan mode and tell you what you need to do to a player if you want a relationship. That's very simple. You just need to kick him out of your life and find a decent, mentally healthy guy who also wants a relationship. Don't thank me. There are so many great men out there. Don't waste your time on a person who tries to improve his lack of confidence by scoring girls instead of fixing his head. And what does this mean? Meet all of his needs. What type of advice is this? Excuse me? You don't exist to please someone's needs or meet all of them. This may happen accidentally, and then it's a match, and then it's a sustainable long-term relationship. But if you try to intentionally meet the whole list of someone's needs, this won't last long, because you will burn out at some point anyway. That's impossible to pretend like you're someone you're not for a long period of time. So don't. It's pointless. Once he finds out that you're not that type he fell for, he will leave anyway. He fell for that type of girl. The girl who liked massaging his feet every morning and was cooking vegetarian meals and who never shared her problems. He fell for that type. You are not his type. But even if you genuinely like doing all of those things, it's better if you stay away from a player. Because if he likes changing sexual partners every week, he has some serious commitment issues. And this has nothing to do with how good of a partner you are or how well you meet his needs. It's his mental problem. So do yourself a favor. Save your mental health and leave the poor insecure guy alone. Sometimes he gives reasonable advice, such as don't give more than they do, communicate your standards, that you're not ready to sleep with him yet, although it's quite contradictory given the type of text messages he recommends using in early stages of your interaction. But at least it's something scripted and ready for use in some certain situations, especially when you are caught off guard and you don't know what to say. But most of his advice just recommends you being someone you're not and attract a guy using this sexy, dominant, confident, socially active persona that may have very little to do with real you. When I was going to university and Matthew Hussey was already a millionaire, I was using his advice on how to approach men, how to flirt, how to increase the sexual tension. And every time I just arrived at one of the two possible outcomes. Either guys thought that I was accessible and just wanted to have sex with me, for which I cannot really blame them. Come on, when you keep texting someone how sexual they make you feel, what else can they be thinking about? Or the second outcome. They were just scared and running away. Yes, this extra sexy behavior can scare some guys away. Not all men are the same. And yes, there are men who also want an emotional connection before getting physical. But because I was trying to be extra sexy schmexy with them, that was too much for them, and they were trying to stay away. That is not to mention that my intention was never to have sex. I was just hoping that somehow increasing sexual tension will help me get a long-term relationship, as Hussey promised. I'm not gonna lie that I had a very representative sample of men that I approached the way he recommended. The number wasn't 100, but how many men do you think Matthew Hussey himself has approached and attracted? That is the problem. His advice was not based on personal experience. Unless you believe one of his video titles, How to Tell If a Guy Likes You Instantly, proven to work. Neither is his advice based on empirical evidence, unless by the time of his first upload on YouTube, he already had a pool of admirers who used his advice and reported their love life success. which to me doesn't sound convincing. That is the problem that I see with his advice. Matthew Hussey just tells you what he would personally like to see in his ideal partner and extrapolates that to all men. But let me repeat, no matter how shocking that sounds, men are not all the same. But by using Matthew Hussey's advice, the only man you can attract is actually Mr. Hussey himself. But the girl who has successfully applied his advice into practice already does exist. So let's wish them happily ever after and have our own lives where we don't put on a mask to seem like someone we're not, where we love and appreciate ourselves the way we are, and where we are loved and appreciated by our partners the way we are. Yes, there is a guy who will appreciate the fact that instead of sending guys spicy text messages on Saturday evening, you enjoy watching Harry Potter and drawing at home. I have previously released a video that talks more about Matthew himself. There I also discuss his spicy text messages and explain why they will only cause harm if you plan to use them. So I recommend you checking it out. Be rational, be healthy, value yourself, and know that I love you.